What do you want us? You have assigned seats? Sure. It's not all being like that.
Mommy?
Come on in. Get some words of wisdom. I'm trying to have a little bit of sun stay. Say it to him? Yeah. Come to my wife? Yeah. Take me away. You go in. They didn't want to look at you. Talk too much business. We're surrounded. I'm surrounded. You put the two right there. Oh, thank you.
I think the bottles are a subtle hint to us not to hold these up.
Yeah, I know. What are we supposed to do? This is a good idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? No? Can everyone hear me in the back? Is that better? Okay. So, welcome to our inaugural IT Executive Summit. My name is James. I'm the head of marketing for Iris. So, welcome to our house. We are really honored to host you this evening at the World Trade Center. Some of you may or may not know this is the tallest building in the United States and the Western Hemisphere. And another fun fact is the height of the building is 1,776 feet, 1776. So you can tell your children that you came to one of the highest points in the US. Today, October 11th, is a very special day. I'm going to ask, any birthdays today, by any chance? Just raise your hand. Any? Hey, we'll give you a cake. We can arrange that. Any work anniversaries? No? Okay. How many years, if I may ask?
In the merger, so 13 years.
13 years, congratulations. I'm gonna ask, does anyone know of any historic day or in history for October 11th? Any, inquisitive folks? October 11th? I'm gonna share three. So I'm gonna give you a hint. Two of them are related to space. One is related to late night TV. So back in 2000, NASA Space Shuttle program flew its 100th mission. Okay? Back in 1984, the first American woman to walk in space was Catherine Dwyer Sullivan. Okay? And my favorite, back in 1975, the first episode of Saturday Night Live aired. And now we're all part of this special day together. So I'm thrilled to be able to say, live from New York, it's Wednesday night from Iris. That's my next punchline. So just so that you're aware, please do not use profanity because we are live streaming this event.
To over 1 billion people?
For those who couldn't join us, but I would say if you like these opening remarks, it's all me. If you didn't, we could blame it on ChatGPT. Okay, but shortly you'll hear from Sanjeev Khanna, our CEO, to talk about this historic evening that's ahead. But of course, followed by this illustrious panel before us, who will really, moderated by our CTO, Ravi Thagarajan, who will talk about what the impact of emerging tech on our business today. We just really thank you for coming out. I mean, hopefully you got to experience the breathtaking sunset, here up at the World Trade Center. But a little bit about Iris, not too much. As you may know, Iris Software started almost over 30 years ago as a startup in Delhi by our co-founders, Sanjeev Khanna, Sunil Puri, as well as Anil Apte, who was in India. And they started as a garage startup, but now we're here. They're taking us to new heights. And we really have the privilege and I have the privilege to introduce one of our co-founders, Sanjeev Khanna, a true self-made story. So put your hands together for Sanjeev.
By the way, this is not written by ChatGPT. And it's not too long. It's like 14 font and two line spacing. So first of all, I'm extremely pleased to kick off this event today. I would personally like to thank all of you who took out time from busy schedule to be here today. And I shout out to my panelists who agreed to share their views at this forum today. Thank you very much. Those of you know Iris, almost 80% of what we do is what we call change the bank, right? Which is nothing but business transformation using technology. While a lot of money is still spent by companies on run the bank, maintenance work, the spend on change the bank is going up every year. And this reflects the growing recognition of technology as something that can shape business outcomes. Right? Technology is no more the invisible hand that would just support business. Technology is now embedded in almost everything they deliver to the customers. Right? And technology leadership now has a space at the table along with business leadership. Right? And as Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. So the technology leadership has to also step up again and do more innovation so that the business can deliver more value to its customers, partners, and employees. And that's the topic for today's discussion. How can technology deliver that to us? And we have a great panel here. I'm sure you'll all enjoy their views, and I'm sure learnings from them will help us serve you better. Our moderator today is Mr. Ravi Tyagarajan. As James said, he's a CTO. He's been in the industry for almost 30 years, and almost a chunk of that time was spent on the other side of the table, actually working with large corporations, where he was shaping large transformation projects, whether it is re-engineering of a wholesale banking product, or a trade platform transformation, or a data platform migration, or using analytics for ML, AI. He's done it all, right? And I'm sure he'll have engaging dialogue with all of us today. Before I hand over to Ravi, a big shout out to my crew, marketing crew. Can you please stand up? James, Jill, for their awesome work. Thank you, guys. Over to you, Ravi.
So thanks everybody for taking time today. I will do a very brief introduction of the panel. As you start weighing in your perspectives, it'll be good to give a little more context on your firm and what your firm is facing and how technology is relevant in your context more and more, right? So the conversation today is really about whether the role of technology has changed significantly in the last 5, 7, 10 years, right? Because prior to that, we have seen a lot of technologists, CIOs being buried under COOs, CFOs. Technology was seen more as a cost rather than as value. And then, probably about 10 years ago, Uber, Airbnb, those kinds of business models, the whole gig economy, a bunch of other things kind of shaped a change in probably the attitude. More and more CIOs got elevated to report to CEOs, and they're more and more in concert with the business, talking about how to deliver value. So the conversation is about what has been your experiences with regards to the role of technology in the respective organizations, right? And what works in terms of delivering value to the business, and what are some challenges along the way, and where do technologies like cloud, data and cloud, AI, ML, data science, and so on, the more current buzzwords, if I may say, where do they stand in terms of delivering business value, right? And what has been the engagement with the business? Is business seeing technology more as part of the P in the P&L or L in the P&L, so some of those kinds of conversations. We have a fairly diverse panel here. So we have Ramana Narayanam here, who is the CIO for Hudson Insurance. So their office is a few streets away from here, probably the shortest commute to this, this thing. So and then we have Alok Daga, who is the CIO in the commercial and corporate banking side of Bank of Montreal. He has come from Toronto for this event. Thanks, Alok. And then we have Steve Santana, who is the CIO for Educational Testing Services. A lot of us, I keep telling Steve that we have been his customers. Our kids have done GRE, TOEFL, in the past, SAT, right? So Steve works for ETS, who's into testing as well as the skills assessment and so on and so forth, an industry that's going tremendous amount of change, right, through COVID and post-COVID. And then we have Randy. He's got a very different role from some of the other CIOs. So he's about financial crimes, he's about cybersecurity, and in a bank, trust is the most important thing that you got at the end of the day. And today, you can lose your trust in no time if your infrastructure is subject to some ransomware attack and ATMs are not allowing you to withdraw money, right? So Randy has got an easy job of making sure that doesn't happen in Bank of Montreal. And then we have Manny Matthew, who is the CIO for the investments and commercial real estate side of New York Life. Yeah. So he's again been in the asset management, investment management space for a long time. And we have Bobby, who has joined us from Bain Consulting, who's one of our partners. We partner with them on a variety of things. So Bobby comes with again a lot of experience around applying data to solve business problems, and we can talk a little later in the conversation about the elephant in the room in that topic, which is Gen AI, but we won't go there to start with, right? Because it still is in some high domain. So with that, I'm probably going to just maybe ask probably Steve to kind of get started with your perspective on where things are, what have you seen change in terms of business engagement with technology, and we can go from there, right? You can give us a little more context on what's going on in ETF that's driving the change, if
All right.
appropriate. Yes, thanks, Steve.
So I'm on for what, an hour?
Sure.
Out of 10. Hour and 10. Quick 5. Thanks for having myself and the panel here and to have hopefully a vibrant discussion. I've been with ETS for almost 2 years. One of the reasons why I came is to drive a transformation program. Not just the digitization of our assessments and the capabilities that many of you, as we've established, are aware of, but it's also to see how can we expand the mission and impact that we have. So we tried to drive fairness and equity through assessments and to give everybody an equal chance, no matter where they came through or where they grew up, to give them the same chance to be successful through a quality education. So a lot of people see the tests as a speed bump to get into the school. At the end of the day, it's verification that you have the skills and the abilities to be successful when you get there. So just passing one of our exams already says you've achieved something quite significant. It's not about getting into the school or getting the visa or whatever. It's like you've actually got something that actually is of value. You should put passing those exams on your resumes because they do mean something. So how's technology impacting our organization? So obviously tremendous digitization, shift from paper-based assessments to digital assessments. There's a tremendous amount of paper that still happens in the world because not everywhere can afford or have the ability to provide access. So paper is still a very important part of our business. However, it's not the strategic thing we do. Paper becomes digital very quickly in our organization. And it has really since the early 2000s. So transformation for our business is not just doing these types of assessments for the United States. We're known as being a Princeton-based American organization. We are looking to expand our mission globally. And there's a number of important countries to us: Vietnam, Japan, China, India is significant. And so we're making new investments, and that starts to change how we transform ourselves and how we look, where our resources and people are located, where the management exists, not all sitting in one place in Princeton, New Jersey. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we have people that are kind of all over the place to drive new and different perspectives to transforming our organization. So just lastly, just on transformation and technology, and that's a big reason why technology is important to us is it really comes down to it's the way that we deliver it, but it's the information as you've gone through it that you can do something new with it. So what can you actually do with the data and information? How can you establish a better relationship with your customer to help them drive more progress through their lives? And there's no analog way to do that at scale. It's all based off of digital products. So that's a big reason why I came. Who should I hand it off to next? I don't want to consume all the time because I really would talk for an hour.
So, can you hear me? Okay, so you said something about the CIOs being led many levels down. So I must be really fortunate because in about 30 years of working, the last 1.5 years will be the first time that I'm not working for a firm where the CIO did not report to the CEO. Right? So I've always had that where the CIO reported to the CEO. Now, I've also worked in many different industries: retail, manufacturing, pure software vendor, had my own startup for a while. So it's a lot of those contexts, you end up with technology being a pretty significant amount of, contributor to your cost paradigm. So you want to keep that close. But at the same time, I don't know of a time in the last 30 years where technology was not a differentiator, where technology was not something that your business relied on to give you, either to bring you to the table or to give you some differentiation, right? So I refuse to answer the question in ways of is technology going from the L side of the business to the P side of the business. I think technology has always been an integral part of the business. Now, if you couch technology in terms of how is the technology organization evolving its contribution, that might be a little different, because I think everybody in this room has had some experience with things like shadow IT, right? Which is essentially, to me, the presence of shadow IT is usually an indicator that the technology organization is perhaps not bringing certain skills to the table, right? And it's not fully well integrated into the core business. Again, that was something that I have found. So every time I have found those organizations develop in that way, it's usually to plug a gap, right? It's a gap in the value you are delivering. So to me, that's how I would look at, is technology adding value? Is technology part of the business, right? Do we understand the business we are a part of? Right? What does that mean? It means, like, I think most of us sitting here are part of some kind of financial organization or a education testing organization. If your firm is not making revenue by selling technology widgets or technology services, then you better be doing something more than just being a pure technologist. Because your value add comes not from your knowledge of technology alone. It comes from your ability to apply that technology somewhere, right? To me, that's the key here.
So maybe we'll switch to Alok, if you want to just quickly give you a context.
Is that on?
It's on.
Hi,
It's very direct.
good evening, everyone. So I'm Alok. I run technology for corporate banking and commercial at BMO. And in this context, BMO today is the fourth largest commercial bank in North America. And I think that's our sweet spot on what we deliver as value to our clients, what we internally consider as our primary segment where we excel in. There are multiple aspects to much of this conversation we are having here today. There's going to be very, very varied views on how technology, whether it's an enabler, whether it's a cost center, whether it's really driving driving the growth for businesses. I think the answer is somewhere in between all of these. I think I'd probably pivot back to something that was said at the start of the call. When you look at change versus run the bank, right? There's been multiple flavors of this over the years. So when Sanjeev said, we work on this and we work on change, or we work on run the bank or run the institution. I think over the years, what's happened is there's been a core fundamental shift in how technology is built, especially when we look at something as intuitive, as a commercial bank, where there hasn't been that level of standardization that other segments of the industry has seen. So going back in time, what we've seen over the last 5, 7, 10 years, there's been some very key pivot points on how technology has evolved in those phases. I think cloud is a big aspect of how we've actually changed how we build. Getting away from a lot of what I'd say, core industry standard vendor products to far more nimble, at-use-based products, with close integration with some of the fintech and some of the components that are coming out in the market now. The other key pivot point for us as a bank was COVID, really, right? For us, when we kind of went into COVID, we were dealing with very large commercial segments. One side of the aspect was, how do we actually protect our clients? How do we make sure they actually go through those phases that none of us really knew whether it was going to be 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 years. So how do you look at that overall cash flow and make sure they're supported during that journey? And at the same time, how do you assess the riskiness of that given enterprise as you look to kind of extend further credit to them and extend further options to them. Right? So to us, from a technology perspective, that was a pivot point. Our ability to run all of the simulations on a daily basis on clients based on multiple scenarios that has historically never been done. So that's where I think, back to the question that Ravi you had, where some of the key pivot points on how technology was seen. I think that was one key time in history where the value that we brought to the table significantly altered. What also altered during that phase was our ability to connect with our clients, using, what's very ubiquitous today, what we call Teams, was our ability to actually make that available to all of our bankers, close to 7,800 bankers in all of North America, and have that enabled for all of our clients. So I think at a more basic level, you had tools like Teams and those components coming in, which enabled us to keep in touch with our clients during that phase. And at the more extreme end, we had all of this, daily simulation running on actually telling all of our bankers what they should actually do with their clients, advising them. Something that was not necessarily done in the business banking or I'd say B2B space, at scale. So I'd say, that's why, how the evolutions happened. And I think we're at a point now where I probably get like 10 emails a week on somebody having gone to some conference, some fintech, or somebody, we're dealing with this PE firm, and that PE firm is investing in XYZ, what's our view on it? So it's gone from, building technology, enabling technologies, running technology, to actually now working very closely with the business on telling them how they deal with their future clients.
Interesting. Great. Ravana.
So Ravi, can you all hear me? Hi. I wanted a clarifying question back to Ravi. Is it an intro?
This is a brief intro.
Okay.
We
I'll
will
stick to
have
that for now. I know you have a lot of
continuing
topics to cover,
conversations to go through.
right? So, yeah,
And it's just not us, you can ask each other questions
yeah,
too.
absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Ramana Narayan. I've been in New York City area for the last 23 years. And have been doing the same commute for the last 23 years, right? So some of you, all of you, are, I'm sure.
That technology has not changed.
I was going to say that. A little bit about me. I started as a C++ programmer back in India. Worked in London for 2 years at Citibank. And my first job in the US was at AIG, right down the street, right on Water Street. Then 10 years at AIG, then 11 years at Chubb, and 2 years at Hudson, which is where I am right now. Right? So in a way, right, I really didn't move anywhere, but I came to the 64th floor today, so I'm really happy. Thank you, Iris, for this opportunity. I wanted to maybe just talk a little bit about the company I'm a part of, right? Hudson Insurance. I've been there for the last 2 years. So other than the folks I spoke to, anybody know who Hudson Insurance is or heard about them?
Hudson people can't.
No, not my colleagues. But,
We got educated 15 minutes ago, so that will not
all
happen,
right. So I know we are not a Bank of Montreal or ETF. We don't have a brand. But I did want to actually talk about it. We are a reasonable sized entity. We are $3 billion, based out of New York City. We are a part of a large group of companies called Fairfax. I don't know if anybody heard about Fairfax. Right? Fairfax has got 30 companies under them. The insurance premium itself is like $30 billion. It's pretty big. And we are one of those companies. Right? And one of the mottos of Fairfax, right, is what they call it, every company or, all the 14 insurance companies within the 30 entities, they expect their businesses to run independent. Like very much the company, the Fairfax that manages $30 billion and probably $70 billion of assets, they have 44 people. Everything is done or managed by the respective businesses. So we are fortunate, right? I'm a part of this $3 billion entity, and we do or we deal with what we call specialty insurance. What does specialty insurance mean to you all? I'm sure all of you have either, I'm sure a car, auto insurance, homeowners, whatever. The specialty is not that, right? And I'm sure if you have your own business, you probably have a business insurance of some kind. We don't do that either, right? And we don't compete with all the, let's call the big brands, whether it's Chubb or AIG, where I used to work. We don't do that. We only focused on what we call specialties or programs. So in a way, right, we provide complete solutions to very niche markets that are not really taken care of by a large carrier. It's because the large carrier doesn't care about it, or the large carrier doesn't see a huge opportunity. So why I'm bringing this up is it actually brings a certain set of technology challenges. Right? Is I'm not looking to build a new technology platform, right, that will serve a $50 million opportunity. I used to be at Chubb where any program or platform I touch, or any new insurance automation I do, it needs to serve a $2 billion, $3 billion, $5 billion opportunity. Then spending millions is not a big deal. But when you come to like a smaller entity like Hudson, and all our opportunities are starting with 5 million to 50 million to 100 million, it's a very different mindset. How do you build a business from ground up? What kind of technology will enable you to do that? So all this, right, is going back to the point that Ravi, you asked, the dependency on technology, right, is growing, right? Especially starting with, let's say 10 years ago, we can manage the whole business in a spreadsheet and a Word document. But today we can't, because all the stuff that you guys are talking about, data and all the other tooling, we're going to talk about. Anyway, so I wanted to maybe express two things. One, right, that 23 years insurance didn't go anywhere. So I certainly want to learn from all of you about different perspectives. But the common stack is absolutely the tech, the Azure or whatever, the cloud, AI and whatnot, right? So this is an opportunity for me, as much to learn, and absolutely also to talk to you about our experiences. Some of the things about whether we report to the CEO or a CIO or a CTO or a CFO, it changes, right? It changes, and it changed for me. Yeah, it's probably a problem for a day, but after that, well, you still have your job to do, right? So I'm looking forward to the discussion, right? Absolutely. So please do ask questions. Right? So maybe Andy.
Great. And thanks for having me as well. I'm Randy Sloan, and I head up technology for the Financial Crimes Unit at Bank of Montreal.
Andy, a bit closer.
A little closer, okay. I never get that I can't be heard. And the Financial Crimes Unit is an interesting place, right? So I look after cyber. The construct that we have is 4 pillars: cyber, fraud, physical security, and global crisis management, or the resiliency of the firm. And to kind of tie it back to the question about being an enabler for the business, we just acquired the Bank of the West. Very successful acquisition, doubled our footprint in the United States. Couldn't have happened if we weren't going to be resilient, if we couldn't make our customers have that trust that Ravi said, and allow us to provide liquidity or extend credit, and to provide all that type of financial transactions. So in the Financial Crimes Unit, I've got a lucky job where I kind of uniquely look after putting in the controls, closing regulatory gaps, which is the majority of my budget, and filling those needs, so heading up all that regulatory work, but also partnering with business folks, people like Alok and his team, to put controls and tools in place that can help enable business. See, just with our acquisition of the Bank of the West, we were challenged to quickly stand up a one-time password process, which we did over 2 weekends, and provided over 122,000 updates for our brand new customers that we brought in from the Bank of the West. So clearly a difference maker. And I don't think this business could be enabled, or that acquisition could take place, if it wasn't for the reliance on technology. And just over that conversion weekend, to spend time, it wasn't only led by the head of technology at our firm, Steve Tennyson, but his partner, Ernie Johansson, who heads up the business and our private banking and our personal banking, and all the banking products that we have out there, sans capital markets, was that right there side by side. So I think that just speaks volumes to the partnership, and that technology is the business. yeah, a lot of my job is to save money and to reduce costs and think of innovative ways to do that. But I think at the core, it's really about enabling the business.
So Bobby, if you can round out.
Yeah, sure. So Bhavi Mehta, as Ravi mentioned, I work with Bain, mostly in the AI space. And I know we'll talk about the elephant in the room later on. That's what has taken my life for the last 18 months on generative AI. I started in financial services around 2003, working with large financial services firms in payment space. From there, went to commercial banking, retail, wealth management, and in the last 5 years, spent a good amount of time in insurance. By the way, Fairfax, I got to know them probably 6 months ago or 10 months ago with your 44 people team. So that was an interesting conversation for me as well. So absolutely a great firm. I think my perspective is going to be very different. You are living this every day in and out, right? And my role is primarily to connect the dots between the tech organizations and the business organizations to make sure that the value is delivered, whether it's growth, whether it's efficiency, whether it's experience, customer experience. And what I have seen in the last, I would say 15 to 20 years, absolutely there is a change in terms of how the organizations have come together. It really doesn't matter, as many of you said, whether it's reporting to the CEO or CFO, but just in terms of how much, if I use the word cloud, in terms of what the CIOs have in the organization around the direction, around how to get the things moving, has significantly changed. So I think definitely a lot more focus. I think many of the banks today say they are not banks, they're technology firms, right? So if that's the case, then absolutely technology is at the heart of it. I remember my journey, I always looked up to Capital One because they were the first ones to some extent, take the technology as well as data analytics together to create a differentiated offering. I would probably, so Ravi did ask me that I'm a panelist, I'm going to share my thoughts, but as well as help him in moderation a little bit. So I have a question listening to all of this, and anyone, I wouldn't put anyone on the spot, but Manny, Alok, or Randy, anyone can pick this up. In your role, as we said in the last 10 years, things have changed, right? In terms of how much experience you bring to the table, as well as how much of decision making involves the technology teams. Still, when we get into large organizations, not every organization, but still there is always this question of how do we bring these teams together? How do we make them work in sync? And people have launched programs like Agile and things like that, right? But believe me, I get into any client situation, we still have to deal with it. So from your perspective, from the technology team's perspective, like we hear a lot from business, right? Oh, technology is not able to do this on time, or this is not working. I would love to have your perspective and share with this team, like from your vantage point, what would you want teams to work on, or how to get organized around this statement? Like, how do you respond to this? And where do you see this going, and how do you resolve this dilemma a little bit? I do not know, like, who wants to pick it up?
I think one of the things that's less discussed and talked about is also the transformation that's happened on the business side as far as their awareness and their knowledge and their acceptance of technology is concerned. I think I distinctly remember 2004-05 when I first started with BMO, my CRO at that time would actually go into my adjudication platform, print everything out, have files of each client's, and then actually would make notations, and his EA would actually take those notations back and key them back onto the system. From there to where we are today is a significant change in how they view technology, how they view data, and how they expect outcomes from us. So I think there's an aspect that's far less discussed, which is how has business evolved over the years in their use and understanding and their awareness of technology. And I think the flip side is the answer to your question is how much is technology aware of what's my business? Like what's driving my risk assessment in the clients that I work with? What's my onboarding time? What are my pain points? What really happens in the real business world? When I'm out, prospecting a client, what does that really mean? What's my best foot forward? So I think the teams that are able to do both of those collectively and jointly and effectively are the teams that are winning in the market. And to answer your question, my daughter started with one of the software companies. They exactly have the same problem.
Yeah, so you're right? It's not a problem that is an IT problem or it's really an organizational problem, or I would even say it's a human problem, right? It's essentially every human organization. I mean, how many people here have heard of Conway's Law? Yeah, a few technologies. So essentially every technology system you build reflects the team structure that built it. And it's the same thing with organizations. So when you think about how do you make organizations that have so many sub-organizations under them work together, you would say, hey, let's adopt Agile. It's not changing what you're doing. Ultimately, the one thing that really sits well with me, and by the way, I work with New York Life. I head up the investment management firm, which is a $700 million investment manager. Huge in terms of investment management size. Tiny in comparison to our huge, much bigger parent, right? But when I still remember when I was going through the interview process for this job, I met a lot of executives. There was one string that ran the entire interview process. Everybody wanted to impress upon me the fact that the firm has a rather unique culture of its own, and it's very, very important that I fit into that culture. And I wasn't sure why everybody was telling me this until I came in. And it's a million different little things. Why am I saying this? Because when you have all these disparate organizations within a large organization, having a singular culture across the organization is sometimes what keeps it together. It's sometimes what makes it work well together. So it's not because you have Agile or you have waterfall or you have some particular methodology. It's because human beings, people, are working together. Everything else is just a way of working together. At least that's what I've seen here. So again, I wouldn't say that we are a shining example of working together. But for a firm our size, we move pretty fast. And I think that's because of that unifying thread of culture that exists. Right.
I'm just going to add in that when you're transforming your organization, becoming more digital, the business teams will tend to think that they can do things sometimes faster than you, and will start. They'll go to, as I'm famous for saying, it's like they visited a seminar at the Ramada Inn off of Route 1 in New Jersey, and they saw a seminar on how they could do Agile. And so they said, we're going to do Agile, and this happened at ETS. So there was a big rollout of Agile, and there's this stand-ups, and everybody's using these terms. The marketing team, they're doing stand-ups, reviewing their code, and really they kind of got the veneer of it, and they said, oh, this is a way I can take the things I don't know what I want to get them not done faster. It just gummed everything up. They got new titles, and they did the exact same thing they did before. Sucked. We're not supposed to, that's not swearing.
I think it's allowed, Steve.
Okay, I've got an issue.
That's exactly. It's okay, it's got 6 words,
Yeah.
6 letters.
We'll edit it.
Yeah, cut that one out. But the reality is that I think as technologists, so how do you change that perspective? I saw a seminar, I went to a conference, and I saw them doing Agile, they're doing AI, we're doing data science. And so we're just gonna do it because the technology team can't keep up with the change. And the reality is because we're minding the shop. We make sure money comes in, product goes out, customers are happy, new features get released, we don't get sued, we can be insured, people don't steal our data, all those types of things. We're doing hard stuff, and what I like to say is we're operating at scale. So it's important for us as technologists to change the conversation with the business by making sure the leadership. I took over an awesome technology organization at ETS. They're very good. The CIO had been around for a long time, and what she had not been doing at the time was focusing on storytelling and walking in the shoes of the business teams. So spending your time not talking about technology and talking about what the business problems are, and then making sure all of your 4 food groups are working properly. You know, your incident management works, the Wi-Fi works, Teams doesn't go down, laptops, you know, do what they're supposed to do. And have that conversation on the business side. It's been probably the biggest change at ETS is that I took actually a really well-performing organization and I added on storytelling on top of it to explain this is why you need these things. But I wouldn't talk about the specific technologies, I'd talk about what is actually happening in their space. I would spend time with the business teams and understanding what their business problems were. And then I would go back to my teams, and there's 2 of them here, you can ask them later if I'm full of it. But the reality is, I go back and then I kind of try to translate that. And in fact, I try to encourage the teams to have that same type of conversation with the business. And it's been very transformative by making that one simple change. To take a team that actually was doing a lot of the right things, but they weren't getting credit for it. They were seen as order takers. Oh, we get the money, we give them to technology, technology churns out the things we told them to do, and then if it doesn't work, well, the technology team didn't get it right. If you can partner with the business and get them to understand, you know, give us your requirements. It's the kind of the stupidest phrase ever. They don't know how to tell you. They didn't teach them that at the Ramada. They just said agile, it's agile, we can just make it up as we go, and at the end, we'll finally get something done when you way overspent your budget. So driving that conversation, I think, with your business teams, having that business level discussion with them has been huge. My biggest compliment that I get from my peer group at ETS is that, Steve, we never really talk about the tooling and the technology. I said, I know, because you don't understand it. I don't want you to talk about that. Please don't talk about APIs at AWS. Please don't talk about, anything you want to do in the data warehouse, or no, now you get a data lake. Like they heard about the data lake at the Ramada, so they're asking about the data lake. So you change the conversation to focus, what's your business problem? We'll go figure out how to make all the ones and zeros do what they need to do. And at the same time, how do we do it at scale? How do we don't get ourselves in trouble and all those sorts of things? So change your conversation.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you been able to take the business users and bring them into IT to like give them a new journey from what they originally thought their job was originally and IT is?
Yeah, there's some. We had, when I first started, we had our BI and analytics team. Like the day I started, there was this deal with the devil that happened where they took the analytics team and they sent them off into the business and they were gonna fix it because we just couldn't handle it. And I just said, yeah, they don't know what they want anyhow, keep them. And I said, we cost too much money and like we've got incident issues. I just said, I know what I gotta focus on. And so lo and behold, a year later, that team is now back in our organization because they couldn't get it, they didn't change it. They thought that, oh, I know how to do PHP and I'm gonna do a bunch of loader scripts. And they just they got very sciencey about it. And I said, actually, could you focus on managing like the descriptions of your data, making data dictionaries and master data and all these other kind of things? Because once you have your data structured and organized right, then you can do analytics on it. No, we're gonna transform it. They were so proud of jobs in AWS taking 8, 10, 15 hours to do the transformation to get loaded in their tables. I'm like, dude, that's gonna cost us a ton of money in AWS. Please stop. So we brought them back. So we've kind of had a little bit, it's not exactly your question. We've had a few people come to the business. We also have some people in the business that are doing technology. They're not quite so shadowy. They're kind of sun IT because I got a bright spotlight on them. But I'm partnering with them because I want to try to see how to make it work. Because first of all, I have a ton of my own problems. And if they can actually solve something, I'm a shareholder in the company too. Let's do it together. And that goes a long way in partnering. We've had some things where we had one group that kind of used to be the shiny little object up on the hill. And now we do expos together with them. We're seen as kind of one organization. And everybody gets jazzed about what we're doing because we were inclusive about it. So put focus on it. When they screw up, bring it back in and go take care of it and handle it and change that dialogue and be focusing on what's the real business outcomes that they're looking to get to.
So I have a follow-on question, Steve. I know that ATS went into AWS probably before your time, right?
I finished it. Actually, I did nothing. My team finished it. I watched them do it and told them to do it for less.
Can I just?
Oh, yeah.
So, if I'm not mistaken, there's a tremendous amount of data in ETS, right? And as you're looking into new markets and whatever else, if you leave the Ramada problem out, right? Or people just walking into some meetings or vendors or somebody, have you seen real value from doing any kind of serious analytics with the data ETS has on cloud or on prem? Has it helped in any of the decision making about the markets and the products?
It's made everything faster, and it's let us deliver everything at scale. So I'm really proud of my team. They delivered this huge, very expensive project called AP Mod. They finished it off in June, which got us off of our legacy mainframe. So we got off the mainframe, and now 100% of our workloads are all in the cloud. Little science project on campus, but that's not a production workload. It's in the business, and we kind of track that. So by having all of the, now we have servers in the cloud. There's a lot of lift and shift. There has to be. But now what's happening is there's transformation over time that starts to use more services, and that's giving us access to instrument our products in ways that we really weren't able to do well on premise because we had services from AWS that we're able to leverage to bring that out. So we're able to populate our data lake with much more information. It still needs more governance because it's being driven by my team, the technology organization, and it needs to get more of a business pull. So we were kind of talking about this earlier, is the company talks about data. We've got data, we need to monetize the data. It's like, yes, we need to monetize the data. We have tons of data, tens of terabytes of data, but it's not structured in a way that we can actually use it efficiently. In fact, it might not even be all the right data that we should be capturing. So the cloud gives us the ability to, as the business is, as I say, what is your question you want to have answered? And then rank and prioritize all of those questions with the answer that is going to be the most valuable to the company. And then we will then go figure out, well, what data do I need to be able to answer that question? I might need to I might have some of the data, I might need to buy some data, I might need to instrument my product differently. The cloud and AWS just gives us a comical amount of options and choices for our developers to take advantage of to progress us. In a data center, we're kind of like landlocked on all those sorts of things. And also, we open some of that stuff up to our business teams. And we look at how we manage the perimeter in the cloud, and actually we can do a very good job of managing the security of that on how we build out those profiles of what we have in AWS. So it has been a game changer for us as a company, a big agility factor. Not the Ramada agility, just being able to be agile. And I'm really proud of the team for the work that they did on that, because I have a lot of my peer groups that are still working to get themselves out of data centers and things like that. Now that I'm in the cloud, I need to make it less expensive. I need to focus on what that data is, get the answers to those questions when we put on the gas.
Interesting. Anybody wants to add?
I think a lot of cloud is I'd say, the construct of where you're coming from. A lot of times, similar to the Ramada problem, it gets positioned as a solution to a problem one may or may not have. And I think that's where large parts of the conversation is pivoting to, at least in our spaces, is how do we make the most effective use of what's there and what areas is going to help us in. I think there are a couple of areas where we see a lot of areas where we actually see significant benefits coming from. Right, one is going cloud native. I think there really isn't much value in putting ES2 servers up there because we're really not taking away your run costs anywhere. Your organizations remain the same. Your ability to kind of do things remain very similar. So the one big area that we're doing is going cloud native and actually using the tooling that's available that really kind of gets everybody, all teams, to the same level playing field. That's also a big driver for us to actually start looking to get out of some of the monolith vendor platforms that have historically been closed in. And so I think from our perspective, it's really cloud is really driving those two things. One is going cloud native, getting out of monolithic platforms that are out there. And the big benefit that we see on the other side is really a lot of the tooling that comes out of the box, a lot of the pre-built models. When you look at data for us, we're talking about trillions of data points that are out there to kind of connect them all to kind of make sense out of it. Much of that is sitting in the banker's head today. Tomorrow it's how do I make that more resistive to that bank? And that's where cloud really kind of gives value to us. Right?
So if you remember, so there was now many years ago, there was a concerted opportunity analysis that you had put together, right? So how was that collaboration experience around whether it is about new potential commercial customers or higher wallet share, dealing with the fuzzy data, dealing with data points that is in their head? What has been the journey?
I think again, we started with just this is background for everyone. When we talk about corporate commercial banking, we talk about really like 10 to 12 different very unique segments. One end of the spectrum, we could have clients who are commercial real estate, either builders or property owners. Other end of the spectrum, we could have private equity firms, doing a lot of very different things. So big part of our focus, Ravi, was actually in the what we would call general diversified regular engineering, firms and things of that nature. And I think it's been hugely promising because, again, many times, you talk about, you take a general industrial complex, they have their input commodities, input costs, output commodities, output industries, and then they start backtracking those into second tier, third tier, fourth tier relationships, news of what's happening. How do you actually connect things like, shipping rates to what's going to happen in a given output of a product, how's GDP macroeconomics driving it. So all of that is what we've been able to achieve. Now that historically would be sitting in a banker's mind. Now when a banker historically could deal with, let's just say 200 clients, now they certainly have the ability to deal with 400, 500 clients because they have this sense automated response coming to them on a daily basis, on a near-time real basis, telling them this is what's happening with their given named client, or this is what's happening in the industry that they're tracking and managing, right? Geographically, commodity-wise, all of those components coming together. Right? And again, that's something we could do at scale. Again, because we're using some of the base models that were available to us, some of the recommendation engine models that were available to us. Now, if I was to rebuild those models on-prem, I would be having a conversation with the board, seeking approvals for funding for stuff like that.
So, anybody wanted to add to that from Manny or Randy?
Well, whenever we talk about the cloud, I always worry about the security of the cloud and the products that we've had to put in place and the various issues we've seen. And I think the advancement of the work that we've been able to do. And although we've put a lot of great innovation in place, we use some really great products to look at horizontal visibility, to be able to track misconfigurations before things go live and things like that, can shake that out earlier. A lot of it comes back down to kind of this good through technology principles. You want to move to, Azure AD. You need to have a very robust and mature identity access process for managing that in place. And if you've got those IAM processes in place, and you've got products, I don't want to sell products, but if you've onboarded your apps to manage your access to the right tools, and you've got, tools like ServiceNow that can manage your change, and you've got a tool that can manage your access across from a privileged perspective in a better way, if that foundation is in place, it makes the work that people like Alok to deliver for the business happen correctly or in a proper manner. I think that kind of balance is what you really have to think about. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
So everybody talks about AWS, and to me that is AWS as you're doing development in the cloud, right? Investment management is a little bit unique in the sense that a lot of the problems that we are trying to solve, vendors have solved first. So for me, my focus has really been on how can I take a whole bunch of either old built software or software that we purchased from a vendor, and now we've been trying to customize it and keep it running in our own data centers out into the cloud. So for us, we've been on a cloud first journey for about 4 years now. And when we say cloud first, there's a reason why we say cloud first. It's not go and develop stuff in AWS. It is start maybe with, can you get a SaaS model? If you can't get a SaaS model, then start thinking about PaaS or IaaS before you start building. So AWS is, your SaaS providers are probably using AWS too, but you don't have to worry about that. Now, all that being said, as you go into more of these SaaS vendor 1, SaaS vendor 2, SaaS vendor 3 problems, you come to the problem that Randy talks about, which is how do you now integrate them together in a safe and secure manner. So that's something that we are solving right now. And that's where I think being part of this much bigger, much more conservative insurance parent has been really useful to me. Because a lot of those problems are being solved at that level, and I'm able to kind of pull the solutions down. Whereas actually putting those solutions in place on my own would probably have been prohibitively expensive for. So the scale does matter in those cases. Yes.
So I had a question for Ramana. You talked about Hudson being a very specialty place and how 10 years ago they would have managed everything in a spreadsheet and Word. But you have to deal with supporting all these small value deals, relatively speaking, right? But relatively specific needs, but you can't kind of tailor create an application for each one of them. What has been your journey, whether you're leveraging any of these technologies or something else, or like Manny, are you looking for some platform that is solving a problem? So how have you navigated that challenge of dealing with the small value but very kind of diverse product or business sector?
No, Ravi, great question. So how much time do you have? I can talk. Sorry.
By definition, you have nobody providing this information.
No, I think some of the stuff these guys are talking about cloud, right? Maybe I want to start there and then say we started our cloud journey like a year and a half ago, right? And I can tell you, right, between last year and now, our budget has gone up, like just the Azure usage, 100%, right? And then I already had 2 C-suite conversations about, I thought it was going to be cheaper, faster, this keeps going up. And so we're not building the case around cost. The case is around speed to market or getting better value. So what Manny said is very close to what I do today. Like it's about, can I just get a solution, right? How ready is it? How close to ready is it to support a particular business? So, when I started off, at Hudson 2 years ago, we had our own in-house platform. Our CEO is an amazing guy. He taught me this. He said, look, we started our business, right? What we call I don't know how many of you know these insurance terms, but kind of, let's say, we outsourced the, let's call distribution, right? So we call it delegated underwriting authority, right? Which means I'm giving a lot of people, right, a pen, right? Again, I'm telling them all the rules. They're going to take care of all the rules. They're going to write they're going to sell the policy, and they're going to send me the data, right? So my boss, he told us, we started off our whole technology platform is very data oriented, right? Data centric. I really didn't need any processing systems, right? 10 years ago. All these people did, they gave me $1 billion, right? I needed a way to manage it. I need to do reinsurance and a bunch of other things. That's fine. It doesn't need a lot of processing power to do reinsurance or whatever. So that's how it started. But over a period of time, they had taken on some directs. This is very fascinating, for me. That's why I asked you how long. Because there are a lot of these relationships with these, we call them like partners, MGAs, program admins, right? They're so passionate about a particular, like a program or call it a small segment they serve. I'll give you an example. These guys, there is a particular group, they only sell insurance to emergency service professional. I never even heard about something like that. I thought, oh, you sell a small business, you get a small business insurance. But these emergency service professional need a certain kind of insurance. I didn't know that, but that's a very, very niche business. It's not like there are thousands of companies who do that, right? And then there is a third party who does this really, really well, right? And they have their own system that does it, right? And suddenly the principal, the guy who owns it, right, he's retiring. And he says, oh, Chris, I really like you. Why don't you just buy my company? Okay, that's just one source of how Hudson is made of like at least 20 of these programs. Each of them, like if I look at it purely from an IT lens, we're building the business, we're getting their access databases, SQL databases, right? And some processes of any kind. So that's what we had. In the last 2 years, right, we said, we understand all the specialty, but there is at least some common thread, which is what we're looking for a SaaS platform, right? We call this like systems of engagement, systems of like record, right? I'm sure all of you heard. Like there is a bit of differentiation you got to do on the front office side of it, but all the back office is nothing but just we need to process, right? So some of the things these guys are talking about, right? I think Steve said, if I have my service now, if I have my servers are running up and running, if my applications are up and running, and if I'm able to book a premium, anything else I want to do, and historically it's been, oh, can we just do this in the front office side of it, meaning do the negotiation, get the right deal, and do all these other things. But all that works for a certain scale, right? Now, when you suddenly say, oh, I can't, I want to make, like, I have an opportunity now, but I can't deal with 1,000 policies or I need to sell 100,000 policies. Suddenly there is a scale.
Yeah.
There is a need for technology. And that's what we're seeing some benefits of now as we moved into cloud. Okay? So even though my cloud budget is gone 100% up, the story, Steve, I need to learn from you how to tell these stories better. Right? It is how we can be there when the business needs and we are very opportunistic. Like you have an opportunity, you have a license, and I have a solution, and it can scale. Okay? That's the story. We have some reasonable successes. One of my colleagues here, Gayatri, he was here. She made this happen for us. I think you talked about Steve, like, I didn't want to talk about APIs to any one of my execs, but I was so glad he called me a couple of weeks ago and asked, do we have those? Right? Yes, right? Yes, they're there.
They're very nice. Thanks very much.
Good.
So Steve, I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier. You talked about this whole taking things from the mainframe, putting it on the cloud. And essentially you also used the word, there was some lift and shift, and we have a bunch of servers in the cloud. How are you spinning that cost story at this point? Or was the mainframe so expensive that you got away with it?
This is where I gotta make sure I don't swear. Part of our story is that in our data centers, we had a lot of problems with outages and instances and reliability.
Okay.
So the sale was on the resiliency that we got out of it. And the cloud gives us a lot of mechanisms for deal with poorly coded things. Databases with procs and stuff like that. All of that kind of stuff that can blow up. So the environment itself, and we're a very bursty type of organization. So I can scale up and scale down. We've done some good creative work to do some auto scaling in certain parts of the portfolio, specifically the database layer, that gives us some ability to handle some of that poorly written things. It would have taken us forever to rewrite them and get them working properly in the data center. By moving to the cloud, it just eliminated all of our stability issues that we had. And from that, then now we're gonna have, I have now committed cost savings every year to reduce what I'm spending in AWS or Azure based off of using services and getting out of EC2 instances and those sorts of things. So we had like a lot of bad that was going on, and so it helped us with that.
So you had a crisis that helped you spend money, and now that you spend that money, you can bring it down by the transformation from servers to serverless.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a good story.
Never let a good crisis go to
I was
waste.
about to-
Yeah, I think a lot of discussion on cloud, and all of you have been on this journey for a while, some 2 years, some 4 years, some maybe 10 years. Like, if there is one thing that you want to share with the audience, maybe we go around the horn, one learning on your cloud journey, something that you would either do again or something that you wouldn't do again on this journey, would be great to wrap this cloud section.
So I'll give you two. One, don't tell anybody it's going to be cheap, because it's not. And two, start small. Don't try to do your biggest thing first, because if you do the biggest thing first, it's not going to be cheaper, but it's going to get really, really expensive. So those are the two things I learned. And again, we were fortunate, we started small by accident, and we never told anybody it was cheap.
So Manny and I were talking a little bit about kids and testing they have to take in school. So to Manny's point, there's two ways to take a math test. You take on the hardest word problem, or you do all the easy ones first. Do all the easy ones first. That's what I would say.
I would agree with that. I think focus on where you can get wins in is important. But also, going to the cloud is cheaper. It may not feel like it, but if you look at all the all-in costs that are surrounded, like I just had a fight with our R&D guys that had all of this whole science fair going on in our campus data center, which is basically just our campus network, and then they just got all these R&D servers. And it's this whole science fair going on in there, and I'm like, I want to get it out of here. I even took pictures of the back end, sent it to all the executives with all the cables all wired all over the place. It looked like Old Delhi. It's just, it's crazy. So the reality is that I said, we're just going to move it. They said, well, it's going to cost us too much money. I'm like, no, you're going to become better as part of this. Because this is going to force you to do things you really should have been doing all along about how you manage your data, how you protect your data, what data you keep. Like, you're going to be part of our processes for all of the data standards. They're just running off in their own little world. So the reality is that you won't always be able to equate it, but just do it. Just go get it done, and then continually over time, you're going to be putting those commitments that, for my level, not talking about the APIs, I just say, yeah, the money's going to come down, CFO. Every year, we're going to take about $1.5 million out. This is going to work. And then that translates down to my teams about how they're going to be more efficient in prioritizing those things into their tech debt backlogs to go solve that financial problem.
I would say a couple of things, Raj. One is, we as CIOs really need to demystify cloud. I think we've made it into something that it really is not, which is, at the end of it, it's a common set of tooling and platforms. It's no different from when people went from PL1 to COBOL to .NET to Java. It's just a regular transition, right? So I think with that demystification, also what needs to happen is actually getting the right folks fully enabled with what those cloud components are. That's one big thing. The other big learning that we've had is it's like kid in a candy store, right? Everybody getting on to there now wants to be an AI developer. everybody wants to be, doing all of the things that they actually read about and they see, and it's very easily available. So one of the key things that we've actually done is, based on those learning coming up, and I have like 20 emails a week saying, I want to build this AI model, and why can't I? And it's really kind of getting them through the process of understanding, how, understanding of the tooling and understanding of the data and understanding of the domain is as critical as those components. So a lot of that is also internal training for us that that we've done over the years based on learnings that we've had. There's a lot of sales going on. That's a tremendous amount of sales going on here. You've got every vendor, including Iris, telling us how we can get to cloud tomorrow. That's they are all enablers for us. But really, as long as we understand what our journey is going to be, and we need to have the capabilities, what we are doing right.
Yes, since I'm the newest, like only 2 years in the cloud, right? So one thing, I would, if I have an opportunity to do it again, the first thing is, I'm going to teach all my team and ourselves the economics of cloud, meaning just the unit costs, right? Just the units, how is it? And second, the second piece, I think Randy, you talked about, we certainly jumped into the cloud with, as simple as, we already have all our identities in Active Directory, it's a junk, just move the whole thing, right? That's not good either. So two things, right? Get the foundations true, right? And doesn't matter even if it's 100%, right? It increased, that's okay, because if my team and we all understand the numbers, then we'll be better at it, right?
Right.
It's like your own home budget, right? If you actually know how much you have in your pocket, you know how much you can spend and can't spend. As simple as that. But in the past, the concern has always been with the data centers, right? Is I have my 2 servers, but then there is overhead, there is network, there is I/O, there is security, physical security, whatever.
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning, right? That's great, Steve. You called about it. 2 years ago, our air conditioning failed in our local data center. That was our use case to go to cloud.
I owned a finding because the air conditioning wasn't high enough, good enough in the data center.
We had a situation where our cooling fans on the roof got snowed in. We were clearing snow. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about this like at any level of detail, especially around there is a first iteration and a second iteration, right?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely looking forward to the second iteration where we know how to come up with unit costs, especially around all of you are working for large company, you probably figured it out. Like for me to come up with what's the true unit cost or true total cost of an application towards a business unit. Otherwise, today it's nothing. It's a huge overhead. I have Active Directory overhead, I have network overhead, I have desktop overhead. Everything is just spread across people, right? Whenever the transparency that cloud gives, if Microsoft tells us there are 40,000 SKUs that you got to figure them out, and out of all those things, what make up an application? That's so different. I feel again. I think Manny, you said all the SaaS applications we are talking about. All of your technology groups, right? Nobody gives me transparency, right? They'll say, give me a deal with DWP. Give me a deal by number of users. Nothing to do with, the CPU, the memory, or whatever, some other unit that is truly unit costed out for us. It's not there, right? So, as a technology leader, I feel like, what Alok said. There is cloud, there is all the touting about all the capabilities or fine-grained features you have, or you have an opportunity. But then either you don't have time or it's all masqueraded somehow. And we are going to be trying to selling that, right? Because none of us, we all have a day job to deliver business value. But if you're a purist, you'll just be a purist for a long time, right? So what I'm saying is it's a dilemma, right? You got to pick your battle and win. And right now, as an application person supporting an insurance company, my job is to deliver value. I said, look, I know as a technologist, I'm really passionate, but I kind of let the technology folks help us answer those questions. All right.
So I think that's a good set of perspectives on the journey to the cloud. So if you kind of take whether we are going to SaaS-based applications or whatever it is, but eventually data is firms' data, right? And in many firms, there's also this pressure from a variety of quarters around being innovative, right? Part of the reason some firms brought technology more into the CEO tier is to demonstrate that they're embracing digital and they're being innovative, because they kind of realized that, look, to claim to be innovative, we have to do something with technology, right? And that became separable from the products that they're delivering at the end of the day. So question back to this, maybe we can go around in probably some random order, is what are you doing with the data? The firm's data about your customers, about your products, you can get standardization of your processing, your life cycle, your workflows, whether it's origination, whether it is investment portfolio, tracking or whatever be it. But how do you kind of deal with differentiation? How do you deal with innovation? Is there an expectation of IT being a co-innovator with the business? And when you were talking about the fact that the next generation of business leaders, and Alok also alluded to this, are far more tech savvy. So what is incumbent upon technology folks is to become business savvy, right? And obviously it is to be business savvy to kind of help with them on their journey to be more competitive, right? To be more innovative. So what is the demand, from all of you in the business own innovation cycle? And what kind of a role is data science, AI, ML playing in that, right? So that's a question. Instead of going in sequence, maybe we'll flip it around. I'll probably give it to either Alok or Steve to start.
It's a very long question.
Yes.
Can you repeat that?
What was the second part?
I think just speaking from experience, I'd probably kind of break into two chunks, right? One is we have wealth of data that is sitting in unstructured form today. There's data that's sitting in structured form that we've been I'd say lucky relative to other organizations where there's been large joint effort across technology, risk, modeling teams on how to kind of bring that common view of that data, the structured data in place. But I think first part of your question, large parts of our focus over the last year or 2 years have been on unstructured data. How do we make sense out of it? How do we use it? How do we extract it? Both for operational reasons and then for modeling and futuristic reasons. Like how do we actually use that data, right? Like for example, in say let's just say in the corporate capital market space, we've got ISDAs, CSAs, massive documents, 150, 200 pages documents. That has a lot of data in it on how that agreement is structured. What are the rules, the pricing, the riskiness, the tiers that are defined by each counterparty. How do you actually get that out and make sense of it? Historically what we've had is people look at these documents on one screen and they've got the application open on the other screen and they're typing it in, line by line or deciphering that information into some construct that the application understands. Very similar construct on the credit side, right? We've got these big fat 300, 400 page documents, complex credit structures, with hundreds of covenants, triggers and pricing options and guarantees and everything else defined. How do you actually transpose them back onto a platform where you can actually transact? But then you're only bringing in data that you need to enable that system to work. There's a huge amount of wealth of data that's sitting on these documents around dependencies, around riskiness of given constructs that they need as part of either the legal approval or as part of the credit adjudication process, which doesn't come to light. So I think our key thing, big part of our focus over the last year and a half, 2 years has been is how do I make sense of that data? How do I get that out in a construct, in a structure that I can then start, really interrogating that data to make some business value out of it. On the AI ML space, my views may be slightly, how should I put it right? I'm trying to find the right way to put it. So, not to put a damper on people's point, but many times I actually see models which can actually be very easily written and built in our traditional constructs. So, when we talk about rule-based, structure-based models, those can very easily be written in that legacy technology. So I see far often those components come in where people take the easy way out. They still think the traditional way while building it on the new models. So I would like to see far more of people starting to think, letting the engine decide on what the coordinates are and what the attribute drivers are, rather than them coming in implicitly and defining it, which I could very easily do on my traditional technology.
So we have a tremendous amount of structured data that actually comes out of our assessments. We do, 20 million assessments a year. Many of those are they're relatively unique. Security and fraud is a huge part of what we defend against, and one of the ways we do that is we just put lots of items out there.
Right.
And so if someone says, "Oh, I got the key to the TOEFL exam," baloney. There isn't a key, right? That's not how it works. You can't steal like the one that 100 people are gonna get. So we have tons and tons of data, and as we're assembling these exams, we're constantly looking over time to make sure that exam is to the population that's taking it's the same to the population that took it in 1980, is the same as the population that took it in 2023. And so we're looking at that data and equating that to make sure that the difficulty of the questions, the mix of the questions, the two question types or item types, all of those things are in balance to make sure that the score that is delivered in 2023 means the same to the person who took it in 1990 or 1980 or something like that. So it's a lot of data that builds up that. Those are all machine learning. Over time, those have all been ML things. My boss just calls it AI now. So I go, yep, it's AI. On the bandwagon. What we'd like to do though is we want to do more with that data to provide more insight. So today we provide a score when you take one of these exams. What we'd like to do is we'd like to give more insights to find out here's where you did well, and the patterns and skills that we see that you're represented that you did well, you should build upon those. And then we also want to give you more insights to tell you here's the areas where you were maybe deficient, and here are some opportunities of skills that maybe if you focus on these specifically, you could improve. And here are some, then we want to monetize it. Here are some classes or courses you can take, or tutoring, or something else that you can get that can help you build up those skills that you can take on your own. So that's the direction we want to go with the data to kind of help transition from just a score to an actual insight.
So from a data perspective, I of course want to protect that data. But you started off the question, Ravi, with business people want to get into technology. Technology people, how do they learn more about the business? I think data is the equalizer. It's really it's currency. It's really what it comes down to, right? It's business information, and it's how you're going to store it in technology. Advantages of the way you can retain and maintain it. And a little bit along those lines, when we look at some of our regulatory pressures, which is usually about our data or our customer data, and a lot of the fraud activity that we have to kind of defend against, and the bad actors that want to get to our data. I knew we arrived as that partnership back to your business, like the technology and business people working together, when our CISO, who I spend half my time with, and the other half is with regulators, with our CISO, said, yeah, I'm the accountable executive. This is Shri speaking. I'm the accountable executive for, and have responsibility for this effort. Randy, introduce yourself. And the way he introduced me then was, and Randy's the accountable executive to deliver on this. So you see that partnership coming together. But back to the data and what we're looking and thinking about, the regulators raise, and they've gotten a lot smarter in this space as well and much more informed. They raise scenarios that we have to be involved with. And they raised a very complicated one. It was called the extreme but plausible scenario, and it was all centered around potential ransomware of our data. And back to the tooling, we learned a lot about what we wanted to do, how you wanted to do a snapshot of this financial data. when you wanted to do that. So you get back to the core of like operational activities and when you would do that. And more importantly, get back to an immutable, the copy you'd want to be able to work off of. So that would be my add to the data space here. I know these folks would think more from a business opportunity perspective, but I support business areas, right, in that horizontal manner. And that's what I wanted to share, my views of the tooling we've put in place, how we are challenged by regulators about how important protecting that data is. And it is literally a board level program from a resiliency perspective. That all ties into, again, the resiliency of our operations and how we run things.
Steve, I have a question for you. You mentioned that quite often you say like the business or product side, tell us the problem, we'll figure it out. In certain instances, some new software tools come out which have a lot of features which you know about. The business doesn't necessarily doesn't know about it, but it could support, it could spur some thought process on their end that hey, we don't want this thing. Like just as an example, nobody knew about Tableau, and you know about it. Tableau just came in. Is there a process to talk to the business and let them know that hey, this new software is available? These are the features it has. Are there problems that it could solve?
Yeah, and I'll be brief on the response is not well executed yet, but we have QBRs with all of our software vendors for what we purchase. Those aren't just for my team. There's also supposed to be always with our business colleagues, and we have super users from those teams that come participate in, so they can see what's the next advances that are coming in. We encourage our business teams to go to conferences, including technology conferences, so that they can learn and get inspired with new ideas and capabilities. I'm kind of, it's being a little funny that I don't want to talk technology with the business, but I do want them to focus on the business problems and let us focus on the safe deployment of cool tech. So a lot of it is we do try to expose that to them. And each of our domains are responsible back to the business for their given area of responsibility so that they can make sure that they're sharing that on a constant basis. And again, everybody in our company is on some kind of spam email list, sending them every new feature that's popping up. They find out about things and they ask it, and so we try to foster the conversation to talk about it. And usually it just turns back with, and so what is this problem is that going to solve? Like how's that going to fit in there? And really kind of turn it back so that it's not just a feature for feature's sake, it's got a business case behind it as progressive.
You should talk about the expo. We do expos periodically, like all applications.
Oh yeah, well I said a little earlier, yeah, we show off the stuff that we build. And sometimes things get into early stages and we try to do those on a regular basis to show the business. They're like a big stand-up. And we invite them to come in, we bring candy, and get people to come in and kind of be a part of these sessions. And everybody really loves it because then they just get engaged and they get to talk with the developers. And what's great is that the developers actually have to talk to other humans. And they get exposure to the business teams and make relationships. And so it's really been a great thing. And it's something that I'm actually very proud of that our organization does. And it was actually done by the developers. I think the second one I had to kind of kick you guys into doing it again, but I mean, it's kind of taken on an energy of its own. So I definitely would encourage you to try to figure out ways to show off all the cool things that your teams have done in the organization.
Steve, so my first name is Dave. So my approach to that is lunch with Dave. So what I do is I buy lunch for 25, 30 people in the company, and they all show up. First of all, it's free lunch. Who doesn't show up, right? Yeah. And then exactly what you talk about. You talk about what's coming, what's going on, what are you doing in the individual departments. And it's, by the way, agnostic to the departments. It could be finance, it could be manufacturing, it could be logistics, whatever. And you get them to recognize that they're not really in that silo they think they're in, but they're in a place where technology stuff, they haven't thought about it yet. And it gives you that forum to say, wait a minute, I'm not thinking about this stuff. And now you have a place where they can do this in a non-competitive kind of environment because they're there for lunch.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna implement that. Except mine's gonna be buy Steve lunch.
So the question you asked was, what are we doing about data?
Yes.
And now everybody, we also promised everybody we are going to talk about Gen AI, right? So the other day I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues in the asset management industry who's both the CIO and the head of quant at his firm. And I asked him, what are you guys doing about Gen AI? And he said, well, I'm trying to figure out when it's lying to me. And then I'm trying to figure out how to stop it from lying to me. Now, why did I say that? The reason I said that is because it has a direct connection to what are we doing about data, right? First thing you have to do if you want to train these models is have good quality data in place. Now, when you talk about good quality data, it's like you said, Steve, we always talk about somebody needs to own it. And then you start getting into creating these ancillary processes that govern or create data quality. One of the things that we have been trying to do over the last 4 years as we've been trying to change our data landscape is get to a point where we have business processes that are responsible for owning the data as they produce it. It's kind of like, think about it, when you are buying something online, you put your address in and it promptly tells you, here's a better address I found for you, right? It's the equivalent of that on the business side, where your peripheral business systems and your core systems are talking to each other. Even if it is not instantly, maybe it's with some lag, but your business process is cleaning your data rather than having a data quality team or a data management team that is cleaning your data. So that's because I can tell you, you can try to clean all of your historical data, and by the time you're done with cleaning the last 10 years of data, you'll be clearing the last 2 years of data that was generated when you were cleaning the other data, right? And these models need good data for you to have any hope of using it. So that's the piece that we've really been focused on right now. It's just getting a data shop in order while also trying to figure out, okay, what do we want to do with some of these AI tools? And like you said, I don't know that we want to call them all AI tools. It's really more the classic MLDS tools that everybody seems to call AI now.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, thank you first, Manny, because bringing the elephant in the room on generative AI. And I know we only have probably, 10 minutes or so. So first of all, I think a couple of things. One is, I'll just give you an example. I remember almost 7 months ago, I went into a big session with CEO and the C-1 level in an insurance company. And everybody is so excited about generative AI. They are like, this is the silver bullet for everything, every problem that I have. And one of the executives was like, oh, I'm going to put all my claims data into these models. They're going to tell me where is the fraud, where is I need to triage, where is what's going to happen. And it took us some time to explain that's not what it is. So I think there is a significant confusion in the market between classic machine learning and what these foundation models do. I know you were talking a lot about unstructured data, and that's where they do come handy quite a lot, because all the generative models, and I actually don't even want to use generative AI, I would rather talk about foundation models because that's what is underlying this technology. They are very, very good with unstructured information. I remember almost, this is 2023, right? Yeah, almost 10 years ago, working with a large audit firm where they were trying to figure out independence risk, which is audit versus advisory, what they can do on the advisory seat. They have thousands of documents coming in to read, and they had people reading those documents to say, am I doing anything wrong? I'm doing some prohibited services. And it took us almost 2 years to build a deep learning model which could do
90% of the job, but still never accurate, right? Fully. And you would not expect it to be fully accurate. But with the new technology, and I think that is one big change that we should all realize, foundation models make it much, much simpler for you. Like if I have to do that work again, I am 100% sure it can be done in like 3 months instead of 3 years. So there is absolutely a value in foundation models. I think the most important thing is to remember, do not confuse it with predicting. They do not predict. They do not forecast. They do not do anomaly detection. They can absolutely reason with you. That's their capability to some extent. They can work as a sounding board for information. Now, one of the other things, because I think there has been a lot of conversations around, I wouldn't get into data privacy, security, that might take like an hour itself. But a lot of conversation around, if I have my data, do I have good enough data for these generative models or foundation models to work? I would say, obviously it depends on what you're trying to do. I think first we should not be taking this hammer to every problem and saying like, oh, let's solve this problem with generative AI. But I think one beauty of this is, in past, if you have to train the models, like deep learning models, you actually need a lot of data points to make them understand what's good, what's bad, right? That is the biggest difference, given these models have been trained on a lot of other information. They are good 80% out of the box. Now, obviously, they will not be, like if you're going to try to use them in healthcare, where there is a genome application, they will not understand what it means. Or in the financial services, sometimes very, very specific language, they will not understand. But for things like becoming a assistant to a financial advisor, doing Q&A on the knowledge base, or understanding what exists, what doesn't exist, or in the customer service, they work very well out of the box. And tuning or training actually makes some of these models worse, because they have been trained on so much information so that they understand a lot of intent. You only tune these models when you're looking for a single shot application. Like, for example, you're trying to figure out claims, but trying to understand whether this claim is good or bad using information, then you train these models. So I think there is a big spectrum of work that can be done without training them on your data. You can use few short examples, but that doesn't mean that you don't need data, because at the end of the day, they only work on your data. If you're going to use them as fact checkers, or if you're going to use them as like source of information, that's not how enterprises should use it. So you still need your data for them to work on, but I'm making a slight nuance difference that you don't need to always train them on your data.
So, picking up from that, maybe Ramana, we skipped you on the last segment. What is your take on GenAI? Right, Bobby, do you take any?
No, I think, Bobby, this is certainly a great learning experience for us. You know, we are in the board of, we have GenAI, right? We just give all our documents, and all our underwriters can go ask any questions they want. We'll answer all the questions. Right? You know, we're still doing POCs for those things, but I think I wanted to just maybe change or just give a little bit of context within how it went within our organization. Right? It started out simply 6 months ago when it became like an IT working group topic. Right? Oh, it's this ChatGPT 3.5, you can generate code, you can troubleshoot code. That's pretty cool. And then after a couple of conversations, one of our business execs heard it from not a Ramadayan, but a nice Ritz-Carlton, right? Some other place. But the point is, our executive came and said, why is IT having all these side conversations? It should be a prime time. So he created, what he actually sponsors, the AI working group. And he said, IT can solve the problems, but I really want the business folks to understand what it is and challenge, right? Come up with real business use cases. So for me, in my opinion, that's amazing. That you have a CEO of the company challenging all these business execs, learn about this. We'll have like IT people teach you what's possible, what's right, what's wrong, meaning in terms of capabilities. But you guys have to come up with problem statements, right? So one of the problem statements, since Bobby, you were talking about, very simple. We already have a bunch of machine learning models, right? For one of our businesses called crop insurance, we do crop insurance. It's $1 billion business. and one of the models predicts rainfall. And it predicts rainfall in a certain weather station at a certain point in time, right? And we got to do all this in November, December of this year for the next 12 months, right? That's the problem statement, right? You can make profit if you can predict well. You don't make enough profit if you don't predict well, right? And our knowledge and business has been so far building it the last, 70 years of NOAA data, and all these kinds of data within databases, machine learning models, and whatnot. So one of the challenges we give to a bunch of startups is we already know our last 10 years, our model, our prediction, our result, our profitability, right? Now we say, go pick your own model, pick your own tech, pick your own data set, right? Your question you asked about, it's not supervised at all. You come up with something and show me that you can do better, maybe you can do a little more efficiently. Okay? And for me, that we got to learn a lot in the next couple of months as we go through this. But for us, that's truly driven by a business person who's saying, look, we know our whatever we have done for the last 10 years, let's see if it can influence for the next 10 years or for the next couple of years. So I believe that's a great use case, right? And once you make it happen, we can go all around and say, look, we truly had something relevant. We certainly have a bunch of opportunities around chatbots, right? Customer service, this and that. But I felt this was something more than machine learning. It could be, I don't know what technology they're going to bring, but I'm looking forward to it.
Generative AI.
For generative AI, next time those C-suite folks ask you for that, just remind them of LCTM. If they remember it, then I think that would be the 4-letter word for them. I think for us, we look to use generative AI more on static documents or internal policies, procedures. For example, we've got like 148 different policies that govern all of our corporate exposures, right? Different segments, different industry, different leverages. So how do you make sure that the banker who's actually structuring the transaction has taken into account all of those constructs, right? I think that's where again, so it's kind of getting away from using a lot of real live transaction where the underlying data is changing on an ongoing basis. We're looking at more kind of quasi-static pieces of information, and then coming back with the right guidance for them as they're going through that process. I think that's where we're looking to use much of our generative AI right
now. We're all in on AI. We had to have an AI working group that is myself as the sponsor and also our head of global marketing. And it's focusing on educating the employees, generating new types of ideas for using it, a place to showcase prototypes and capabilities that we're using. So, and then also the security team is about that on the ethics and how we focus on transparency and ethical use of AI in all of our models and how we can make sure that's something that we publish to people in a clear way. So we've got a program around that. So what are we actually doing? We've got 2 tracks. One is on true generative AI. We have, like we mentioned, millions of these item types that are created by psychometricians. And we're finding that we can look at all the millions of items we put in, feed them in, and build models off of those things and generate new items fairly accurately and quickly that are very similar at a certain difficulty level. So we can tell it, I need 1,000 items at this difficulty level, pops them out in like 15, 20 minutes. It could have taken weeks for our psychometricians to write. And we use those things primarily, we can use them on our TOEIC tests for businesses. And eventually we'll get there more from probably a TOEFL brand and even eventually maybe even GRE. The second area that it's gonna be a cost savings thing. The second area is that on scoring. So when exams come back in, a lot of them will have constructed response, so essays. And we actually have tooling that sends that out to thousands of people, and then they go in and they give a score based on what they read, and that goes in the system. We didn't even work very hard to make a model that got to be able to 90% right. they took the rubric that they're supposed to score against, we fed that into the model, and 90% accurate to what the human was scoring. So right now we're focusing on using it as a co-pilot thing. So hey, here's some areas you should look at in the essay. But in reality, we're just going to use that as training data over time to get it even better. Once we get it up to maybe 95 to 99% accurate to the raters, we can do cost reduction and get scores and things out faster to users. Plus, because the computer is doing all of the computation of what the score is, today, it knows why it did it. So it can actually output a whole bunch of stuff and insights of, oh, here's why I gave this score. Here's information. Where the human rater does not have time to do that. They go 3, 6, 7. I mean, it takes time for them to do it. So we can actually give a better output that's more meaningful to the test taker and also save money at the same time.
Steve, maybe just a quick follow-up on that. And first, I love that example because that's where I was like 90% of some of the stuff, you need your data to work on it, but you really don't need to tune it. One interesting thing that you said, 90 to 95% accurate. How do you define that? Because as humans, 2,000 people are scoring based on maybe a rubric, but in
We just had a bunch of scores come in. 5,000 scores came in where the humans did it. And then we said, computer, you do it.
Yeah.
And then we just compared and we'd say it's 95
Yeah,
or
so
something.
I guess where I was going is the inherent assumption in that is that human is correct on
Right.
scoring those, and the biases that humans have in consistent scoring.
Oh yeah, and that's also another side effect that we can use it for training raters. So we can, in the background, give it a score, and then we can give that, we have a team that manages the raters and start to see people that seem to be, used to do that by just every once in a while, they'd go check certain raters and see how we can do it on every single one right now and see who's out of band. And we can give them coaching, or maybe we don't want to hire that rater again. Those sorts of things are all in track. So yeah, it's true. We don't assume the human is right. However, we have some humans that we know what they've done for years, and we put those into models where we look at like we mentioned, the history of what has gone into play there and balance it out. That's great.
So we are probably 2-3 minutes over time. I wanted to kind of, if it's okay, want to open it up for questions, hopefully on broader topics, not just generative AI, to this great panel we have here.
Question for Randy.
Yes, can we pass the mic around, please?
So Randy, the question is, how do you, we've heard about how these models are maybe disrupting some elements of business, the example that Steve gave, the example that Vaveed gave. How do you, are regulators asking you questions about the validity of how you have tested for the model before you bring it into the enterprise? That's part A of the question. And part B, how disruptive has been it for your team from an internal process perspective to handle these models that are coming in, and so protecting the model, if you will, does that play into it at all?
It does. It's built off of a lot of the requirements and what the inputs are, and ensuring that the right controls are in place. What's most worrisome when we look at the controls around these models and the folks that build them is how they're being created, where the data is coming from, that legacy of that data, the lineage of it, and where, say, a business managed app or maybe an end user computing device app is involved. Those are the things that we've looked at, and we have beds and environments that we work through that. So it's really more done from a governance perspective of ensuring it's cataloged, it's captured, it's put through, rather than someone out there, spinning something up. I don't know, Alok, you could probably add to that. You're more at the core of creating them.
I'd say there are two different flavors here, right? There is the core models, whether we call them risk models, capital models, that the regulators are really, really interested in. those are regression testing models. Those are not AI-based models. Just to be very clear on that, right? And then, at least from a bank's perspective, there's a very extensive process on what's called the model vetting process. They all go through that process. They all go through back testing. Any changes kind of goes through that. That's why, from a regulator business perspective, I think much of the AI work that we're doing is either in the assisted space, where we're assisting our users, our bankers, or we're using it in the space where we're doing the recommendation. And again, that's also an assistance. It's really saying, instead of you looking at 10,000 items, I'm distilling it down to like these few for you to assess, right? I think that's where large parts of our focus has been.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, one question, I'll certainly answer it from an insurance regulation perspective, right? I think any of these models supervised, we have a way to explain them, that's great. Any of those new things that we talk about, there is regulation coming up, which is about, I think some of the things we talk, explainability, right? And the vetting process you gotta go through. There is probably going to be audits in the future, especially anything we call admitted products. If I'm selling it to something that's approved by the state commissioner, there is a bunch of requirements they're putting together. So, even though there's a lot of excitement about trying to use them, I think what Alok said, they'll be in the assistance mode for a long time.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, thanks. One of the observation, not a question, rather. In today's world, when we talk about generative AI, we are actually talking about AI model generating the data to be fed into the AI model to actually do the work or to train. And that is what the most scary part is. So you are basically taking your base data and you're generating synthetic data and using that synthetic data to train your model. Wherever, in whichever business, the data, you have a very sparse data. So in that world, how would you all react?
And it's no different from what's happening with most human beings today, where most of us consume news that already cater to our biases. It's pretty much the same thing. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it happens in places other than generative AI.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said, Manny. The other thing is, I think I'll bring us back to where generative AI is today and what it can be used for. I think when we are talking about scale data situations, let's say you're talking about fraud detection, anomalies, that's not where it is. That's not where this needs to get used. And what Alok was saying, outside of financial services, we have clients who are exposing it, like Coca-Cola is public, you probably have seen it, or Carrefour in retail. They're exposing it to customers, but in financial services, 95% of the times, the output of these models is for assisting customers. And I think there is always a lot of conversation around the content that they are going to generate, and that content, does it create a recursiveness in the model because you're creating the content and then you're feeding on the same content. But I'm sure there are going to be constraints that are going to come in to say like, okay, every model or every content that's generated is watermarked in a way, like in a technology way, right? And how do you continue to train these models? But at the end of the day, like these are baby brains. So they are going to go on their own journey of AGI, which is where everybody is looking forward to, like in 30, 50 years. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. But I think if all of you are interested in this, I think you should read a book. Moon is a Stupid Mistress or something like, I forgot the real one, where they talk about like a very intelligent computer. And that book was written like, I don't know, 30, 40 years, 20 years ago. And if you read it, you will realize that they're talking about what's happening today a little bit. So.
Moon is a harsh word.
Moon is a harsh word, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions? It was a wonderful discussion. It was very insightful. Thank you so much for all the insights. Considering that AI is so well integrated to Gen AI, all the kids are using ChatGPT in school and stuff. What is the effect of this in the future generation and the job market and the overall scenario 10, 20 years down the lane?
Steve?
Oh,
Kids and education.
exactly. We talk about this a lot internally. Is it just the new calculator? Just at the scale of all of the knowledge of humanity behind it. If that's the reality that we're going to be able to sustain, we need to figure out how we weave that into education. There's a lot of educators that are against it, but you're seeing lots more kind of get on board with it because it hallucinates. It's not as smart as you think it is. It can't predict the future. All those sorts of things that we look to humans to do. So it at least today, it's seeming like it should be a tool that we integrate. But what we really have to be careful about is like the part that we mentioned, just like, like the news we all know caters to our biases. I think Manny's point's very excellent. We have to be very careful about the data that we train these models on. And we need to be very suspect of the data that is going into these models that is just, we just browse the internet and now it's telling us how to launch rockets, So we gotta be sensitive to where that data, that we need to hold these companies very accountable for being ethical in where they source this information, how they treat that information, how they make sure that they don't recurse biases that just don't need to be pushed. And that's just a journey I think we're just beginning to be on, is kind of all of the policy and control that's in there. But we don't always need the governments to do it, that our companies would need to be kind of signing on to petitions to kind of do that together.
Manny, do you have something?
So somebody said about this book that was written a while ago that we are kind of seem to be living through right now, right? And that's not the first time. And if anybody's read H.G. Wells here, he wrote about all of those stuff that happened in the future. So, real life does kind of reflect science fiction at some point in the future, right? How many of you, everybody's seen Jurassic Park, they talk about life will find a way. Now, there's a lot of fear today about AI and how it might take jobs and replace human beings, so on and so forth. And Bhavi and I were talking about this New York Times article that came out some time ago, which talks about peak humanity. And are we at peak humanity? So the idea there is, we've had tremendous growth, exponential growth in human population in the last 100 years or so. But as human society has become more prosperous, your human reproductive rates have come down to the point where some of these models are predicting somewhere around 2080, not relevant to anybody in this room, right? You're going to peak out on the human population growth scenario. What's more worrisome is what it predicts after that. It predicts a dramatic fall. The fall is not going to be as smooth as the rise. The fall is going to be like a few decades before which you're down to like 2 billion or 3 billion people in the world. Guess what? That's when we are going to need these assistants. Right? So,
by the way, I think many of us would remember the movie Back to the Future. I think that's the only one that I'm trying to figure out when that's going to happen.
yeah.
We'll make this the last question. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, panel, for an engaging discussion. Really enjoyed it. And Steve, thank you for the moniker, the Ramda problem. I know, because I'm going to refer to that many times when I'm meeting with my team. My question is that we have so many technologies, and we spoke about AI, ML, we spoke about cloud, analytics, tons of shiny tools out there which works on the data. Right? But then Manny referred to it earlier that the biggest fear is, are they giving us the right outcome? Are they giving us the right output? So there is, finally it boils down to the quality of data and probably to some extent the quantity of data as well.
Actually, I would say quality of answers.
Yeah.
The problem is figuring out the quality of answers.
So how do you make sure that there is enough focus on, how do we ensure that the quality is up there?
It's what everybody said, right? It's what everybody just said. A lot of these places where, like, it's like a Google search. If you do a Google search, as long as the search result that was really relevant to you is on that first page, it's all right, right? It doesn't have to be the top search result. In those cases, it's okay to be just a little wrong or just a little right. In all those other cases, it'll be in assistance mode, as we all said. It's still an enabler. A friend of mine once said this to me, and I really agree with this. Technology doesn't always make things better. It just makes more things possible. Right? You got to deal with it after that.
True. But yeah, I'm also privileged to work with many of you on data quality issues. So, from a Gen AI perspective, I get that. But from a broader technology angle, right, the quality, and how do you focus more on quality and ensuring that you bring up the quality of the data higher?
And I do not know, but I will pick it up from someone said it. If you make it a job of a technology team to make it data quality better, that's not going to happen. You have to make it the part of the business process.
And it's not a business person's team, or it's not a one team's problem.
It's everybody's.
Yeah, it's a business process problem you have to solve.
Yeah, I think that's the way to solve it. And again, I think one thing which I find very interesting, everybody getting stuck on my data is not good. Data is never going to be good. There are always going to be gaps. Like if everybody had a perfect data, there is no decision is to be made. When you have all information, there is no decision to be made. Decision is to be made when you don't have full information. So data is never going to be perfect. Let's deal with it. I guess with that. Okay.
Please, a round of applause for our panelists. I do think there's going to be a need for a part two in the hopefully not too distant future. But I do want to thank all the participants for being here, hanging out, enjoying the time together. So a round of applause to everyone in the room. So we're hoping that you can hang out. There's dessert. The bar is still open. The panelists are still here for those who have more questions. But really, from the on behalf of Iris
Go ahead.
and Sanjeev, I mean, thank you so much.
Applause for
coming.
James and his team for doing all this.
Big shout out to Jill, to Joe, to Kelly, for everyone who was part of the team, and obviously all of you who are here are on behalf of our client partners, and we're just hoping the relationship can continue to flourish. So thank you so much.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So just speaking of what Avi said about data, it's a very interesting book that I'm reading these days. If you get a chance, please get hold of it. It's called The Art of Thinking Clearly. I forget the author's name, but if you Google it, you'll find it. It's a very nice book. It talks of all the biases that we have in life. Each chapter is only 3-4 pages, but each chapter covers a bias that we have and explains in layman terms. And one thing the book talks about, which goes back to Bhavi's point, is that human beings were not structured to process too much data, right? If you go back to the caveman days, if he heard a sound of a tiger, he ran. He was not thinking, they're saying, is it tiger or something else? So it was not processed. We are not structured to say, let's look at all the data and then decide what's good for us. We take good data and we run. So, thank you.
So dessert is right outside where you came in, so please enjoy the rest of the evening.
You can stand next to
Good job. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.